Welcome, I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. Grab those notepads and your pen right now because I want you to take notes. I want you to make a commitment to yourself that you will jot down some sort of action item that you can implement in your business today. That's what this is all about, implementation to drive your business forward. Now, I do have some good news. I'm going to have an infographic that I share on this screen, and I'm also going to make available to you the notes that I use on the screen. So you don't have to jot down any of that stuff. If you like what you see and you think it'll be useful to you in your business, then you can just go into the link in the description and download that. You just enter your name and your email address and you'll get a PNG or a PDF copy of those documents. Instead, what you're going to be taking notes on is you're going to be making this discussion relevant to your business, and you're going to look at everything we discussed today through the lens of your business. And today we're going to continue our discussion and our look at marketing, sales and marketing, or as I said in the previous video, marketing and sales. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? If you haven't seen that video, it's not imperative that you watch these chronologically, but I think in this case it would be more useful. So maybe you want to pause and go back and watch the video on marketing and sales first, the first in this series, and then come on to this one. In today's discussion, we will look closer at the difference between branding and your brand and tactical marketing. So both of them fall into the realm of marketing, of course, whether you're looking at branding, messages, or tactical advertising, tactical marketing strategies. And we're going to sort of differentiate between those two. And we'll just do a little bit of a recap on sales and marketing. And let's just dive right in. I'm going to bring up on the screen the first infographic that can help you to sort of get your head around, what are we talking about here? We're saying sales, marketing, branding, tactical. How do these terms all fit together? Let's make this easy because your business should be fun and these terms are not complicated, but there is quite a bit involved, as I mentioned before, in marketing. So I've created this infographic that is meant to depict for you in a visual manner. I'm a very visual person, although I understand that we all learn with a variety of different ways. So, you know, the audio as well as the visual together should be helpful. If you're just listening to this sort of like as a podcast, you may want to come back and look at these visual cues in this particular blog. All right, so the first thing up there we've got is marketing, and that's the big red circle. And you can see that's all encompassing. And the definition on the left-hand side there says, marketing is communicating a product or service's value with the objective of influencing purchase decisions. That makes sense. We're just communicating the value of our product to our target market. And you can see that it says in the circle, the big red circle, all encompassing, marketing consists of all branding, tactical, and sales strategies. So whenever you're talking about, well, my brand, or I have a branding strategy that I'm communicating through branding, through a tactical effort, or through something specifically that we would consider and define as sales, that's all part of marketing. And then the next on the list there is sales, and that's the smallest, the green circle there. And it says sales, the definition is facilitating or advancing conversions in the latter stages of the customer journey or sales funnel. So that's what we think of when we think of sales. And you can see if you look at the green circle on the bottom, it says sales reps, customer service agents, sales tools are primarily tactical, but they contribute to branding as well. So let's jump up to branding. Maybe I've got these a little bit out of order. Maybe I should have covered branding first. With branding, the blue circle, the definition I've got there is long-term strategy to create awareness, make an impression, convey emotion, to strengthen purchase consideration. So going back a moment to the green circle, you can understand that any efforts taken by your sales reps or customer service agents or your sales tools, those strategies which are designed to advance conversions in the latter stages of the customer journey or the sales funnel, even if they are unsuccessful, they still contribute toward branding and they should be true to your brand. And then lastly, the yellow circle is tactical, and that is when we talk about that, the definition is short-term strategy to create urgency, fear of missing out, and a call to action. And of course, all of your tactical falls within and should be consistent with your brand. You want to have integrity there. That's why it fits within, of course, the red circle of marketing, and it fits within the blue circle of branding, because all of your tactical should also serve to brand. It should also serve to create, and it does, whether you intend for it to or not. It is part of your brand. All of your tactical efforts, as are all of your sales efforts, they're part of your brand. Although they're more specific in terms of nature, in terms of their intent, your tactical is further down the funnel once again. And that's why we're sort of zeroing in on those circles. And it's not an exact, like a target with a bullseye, but you can think of it that way. As we get, we think of, broadly speaking, all of it is marketing, but we want to make sure that we have branding within that. We have a brand that's part of our marketing, and then also within that we have tactical efforts, and within that we also have our sales efforts. So let's dive into this a little bit more, and I'll bring up some notes on the screen. Like I say, those will be available to you for free download, and we'll tackle this a little bit more and get our heads wrapped around this completely. Okay, with that recap sort of under our belt, where we once again looked at what is the difference between sales and marketing, and now we're going to focus today's discussion on branding and tactical, and what are the differences and how do they interact, and how can you strategize within your business to make best use of this. So we'll start off with branding, and the first note I have up there is, what are the objectives of branding? And this goes to that definition that was on the screen a moment ago. Long-term effectiveness. Branding is all about your long-term strategy. All of your efforts put forth towards branding should pay off for a long time to come, perhaps months and years into the future. So you can appreciate those brands, those strongest brands, Apple, Coca-Cola, these types of things, McDonald's. You can probably recall advertising, branding messages that you consumed of theirs many, many years ago. You could probably recall a Polar Bear Coca-Cola commercial, or the Santa Claus Coca-Cola commercials from many years ago. It was a long-term, had long-term effectiveness. You might even remember some Ronald McDonald commercial from the 90s or the 70s or the 80s, depending on your age, and that kind of thing. So branding is all about long-term effectiveness. Another objective of branding is to create awareness. So we think of that customer funnel, and once again, if you haven't seen that video, go back and check out the first video in this series where we look at the customer journey and the sales funnel. But at the very top of that is awareness. Customers become aware of a need that they have, some need to solve a problem, a solution they're looking for, or a feeling that they want to experience, and that is back in awareness. And you want to create awareness about that you can solve those needs, that you can convey those feelings to them, and that kind of thing. So creating awareness is part of branding. Memorable. All your branding efforts and strategies should be memorable, and they are. Once again, it's the kind of thing that these things are memorable. There's this inadvertent effect you can have. You're creating a brand whether you intend to or not. Some of you aren't focused on your brand. You're like, well, I don't really focus on that kind of stuff. I just try to have a good product and service. I try to be friendly to my customers. I mean, that's part of your brand. You are conveying that brand, and some of you are doing a great job even without trying. You're just sort of unconsciously competent at creating a very strong and good brand. And the opposite can be true as well. So be careful, because it's memorable. Branding is all about being memorable to your market, to your target market. It's memorable what you're doing. Your brand has a lasting effect. Also, branding objective is consumer consideration. You're trying to get on that list of considerations. So when we talked earlier about the customer funnel and organically the stages that they go through before purchase, they become aware of a need, And as they do their research to pacify fears of making a mistake, they start to put things on their purchase consideration list. You start to, and when you put yourself in the shoes of a customer, when you are a customer, you do the same thing. You start to think, okay, well, I've got this need I need to fill, and so I'm going to do a little bit of research. As you're doing that research and you're working your way through the funnel, you're working your way through the customer journey, you're starting to create short lists, and you're putting some things on your purchase consideration list. You're like, I'm not sure I'm gonna get that yet, but that deserves some consideration. Well, that's the job of branding, is to get your product or service on the consideration list. If it's not on the consideration list, then outside of a whim, you're not likely to be part of that final purchase decision that your intended market has. The next part of branding objectives is to convey emotion and image, to create an impression. That's what branding's all about. So the examples I have up there is fun. You may want to have a brand, your brand is meant to convey an image or the emotion of fun, professional, luxurious. So think of the difference, like Chuck E. Cheese back in the day was trying to convey an impression in their brand of all about fun. That's not what, say, a legal team or a healthcare provider maybe wants in their branding. Maybe they want to come across as much more professional and luxurious. You can understand the different branding messages, the different brand between a luxury brand of, say, a high-end watch like a Rolex or something like that, versus something that is more casual. So I've got up there some other examples: formal, casual, and vogue. So you may want to have a brand that this is the trendy thing, this is in fashion right now. Healthy, happiness, these are all various branding impressions that you're trying to create. And you have to decide for your business which of these. You don't want to be all things. You can never be all things to all people. It's not likely that you're going to be both super professional and fun. Those aren't necessarily competing values, but they aren't really found in the same end of the spectrum. Also, branding has the objective of nurturing, keeping people along. You want to remain top of mind. So we understand that people aren't necessarily in the market for our product or service right now at all times. Timing is everything, and when people do find themselves in the market and needing of something that we provide, we want to make sure that we're top of mind. That's the job of branding. So you're nurturing them. So once we talked before about people, they sort of go in and out of this customer sales journey, out of the funnel. And so a person might go in, they do some initial research, the timing's not right for them, and they don't pull a trigger on anything, and they exit. But you're nurturing them with some branding messages that when they do come back in, when the timing is right for them, they think of you. Also, branding is meant to build loyalty. So again, if we use the example of Coca-Cola, you could say, well, why do they even need to advertise? It's not like when I go to the supermarket, the grocery store, or the convenience store on the corner and I buy a Coke, that their advertising had any effect on me. Well, research would indicate otherwise, and what it is meant to build loyalty. If they never did their advertising, their branding messages, then eventually they kind of fall out of favor with people, and people are more likely to try competing brands. But by continually sending a message that, they're all about fun, enjoyment, whatever the branding message they're trying to, that, satisfaction, have a Coke and a smile, whatever the latest one happens to be, it builds loyalty. Brand loyalty is what you're trying to do. So consider these objectives as you go through and you're creating strategies for your brand. Remember, you have a brand whether you like it or not. And I gave some examples of big time companies like Coke and Apple, and I understand none of you have that kind of marketing budget, but these are very helpful to kind of explain the concept, and you can do it on a smaller scale. So bear in mind, these objectives always begin with the end in mind, and when you are formulating your brand very intently, you are very with purpose moving forward with creating a brand, keep these objectives in mind. All right, the next thing we're going to look at here with branding are the elements that affect brand. And I said before, you're branding whether you like it or not, and all of these things affect your brand. So I want you to consider these things. So even if you're not so deliberate in your intention of building your brand, just remember it organically occurs over time with all your marketing messages. It's just about communication. So as you are communicating with the market, you always are communicating with the market, whether you intend to or not. And I hope you'll be more deliberate, but as you are, consider all of these elements. You don't necessarily have to deliberately have a strategy associated with each of the things on here. It depends on your business, your industry, and the context of how your marketing strategy is going to play out. But I want you to consider all of these things, because not considering them may have you inadvertently creating the wrong brand or being incongruent with the brand message that you want to send. So these are the elements. So your logo, and do you even have a logo? Some of you may not have a logo, but your logo is certainly an element that affects your brand. Your slogan, do you have a slogan that you use as part of your brand? I mentioned a moment ago an old Coke slogan, "Have a Coke and a Smile," from way back in the 80s. And that's part of the brand. Do you have a slogan? My company slogan is perpetual refinement. And it reminds us, and it reminds our clients, and it reminds our prospective market that our brand is always about improving. Your aesthetic elements in all of your messages and your brand should be largely considered. This affects brand, and I want you to think about the aesthetic elements. Whenever I think brand, I think this. So those are design elements, themes, images, color palette, font, and decor. You might think, well, come on, Michael, something as insignificant as font really affects my brand? Absolutely. You can imagine, again, if I use the example of legal office or healthcare provider, and they were using some big puffy billowy font as part of their website, that does not convey the emotion or the impression of professionalism, as maybe they've got New Times Roman font or something that's much more acceptable. And you can appreciate all of these aesthetic elements affect brand. And once again, don't just haphazardly, without giving good consideration to these things when you are approving a design or whatever. Is it consistent with your brand, what you are trying to convey? Now, just a moment here, I don't have this in this presentation in the notes anywhere, but you want to consider your culture and your values when you're shaping your brand. Your brand should be consistent with that. Remember, this is communicating. So in part, you want to communicate your values to your prospective customers, to your leads, to your target market. And again, do your aesthetic and design elements and the themes that you have do that. The next element I have up here is copy. So we're talking about the written text that you use in your messages, whether we're talking about print media or predominantly copies found on your website, within also your social media campaigns and that kind of thing. Are you using very formal or colloquial copy? So our brand, we are professionals, and we try to keep things fairly professional, but we also don't mind being colloquial, because we understand we're dealing with people. We're in a humanities business, we're dealing with other people, and we want to have fun with our business as well. So you have to give consideration to that. Like when I approve a social media message, or when I create these videos, or any kind of messages that go out there, I have to consider. You won't hear me using a lot of profanity as example in what I say, and we won't tolerate certain types of messages and everything in our copy. So we go back and we've refined that over time to try to further refine our brand. Audio and the music. Some of you might have a sonic logo, or you're using music in a music bed that is in some of the content that you create for your marketing messages as part of your brand, and you want to make sure that that's consistent with the image you're trying to leave people with. What about your people's appearance? These are team members, to the extent that you use a team, and that is part of your brand for sure. So selecting your customer-facing people is very important as well, and making sure that when you select them, that they understand your brand and that it's consistent throughout. So you would have sort of brand standards as it relates to your people. Now, this is probably not very politically correct or popular to talk about, because we like to think these days that everybody's the same, it doesn't matter. Diversity, no matter what happens and how different they are, we should tolerate everything. But in business, that's not realistic. That's not how things work. You are, once again, sending a message to the market, whether you intend to or not, and you'd like to avoid inadvertent messages. So it may not be fair that there's prejudices out there and there's discrimination, and both of those words, by the way, don't necessarily have to be used in a negative context. You could hear people in their marketing messages saying that their brand is for the discriminating person. That doesn't mean that they're racially discriminating. It means that they're discriminating from one product to another. So a person who has very high taste, very refined tastes or whatever, maybe goes for a brand that pays attention to detail more so than something that is considered a little bit more loosey-goosey or sloppy. So consider this with your people as well. I've got some examples up here. So dress code. Are your people allowed to dress however they want? And uniforms. What about even in these days of virtual conferences and that kind of stuff? Do you have a dress code? Is it made clear to your people what they can and can't wear when they are doing customer-facing activities? What about piercings, tattoos? Those are very popular over the last number of years. They haven't always been in favor, and some of your market may be some of your target market may be people that don't have an appreciation for something that may be trending more now. And so I know, and I've referenced before, that I took Disney Institute training, and Disney was telling us that they have very strict policies as it relates to some of these things for their people's appearance. So it's not like they say you can't have a tattoo, but they want to make sure that tattoos are covered, and to the extent they can't be covered, they want to make sure they're not offensive to their guests in some way. And so they might have to have makeup covering them if they couldn't be covered by the sleeve of a shirt or something like that. Hair, you can appreciate in certain environments. You want to be careful about how the hair is worn, certainly in a restaurant business or food environment, also healthcare environment. Also, what about the various colors of hair, the type of haircuts, a big mohawk, or I can't think of a good example, but I digress. My brain is going different places there. But it's something you want to give consideration to. Grooming. Are people coming in and their shoes are unpolished and they look disheveled, their tie's not on straight? If you have standards associated, then we want to make sure that the grooming practices, even the breath, and these kind of things affect your brand. People are sending messages at all times to your customers, whether you like it or not. So pay attention to this stuff. What about age? There are certain brands that are more associated with younger, youthful, and some brands that are more associated with maybe more seasoned or distinguished professionals and that kind of stuff. Now, in your hiring policies, I know all entrepreneurs want to hire the very best person regardless of many of these things, but you do have to be conscious and cognizant of how it affects your brand. Attractiveness, you might think, well, that's not fair, we can't control how good looking we are or whatever, but we do understand some brands are hiring. I can think of some restaurants that do fairly well that are clearly, it's not an official policy that they put out there, but they're clearly going out of their way to hire very attractive people. That's part of the brand. Also, you think of a restaurant like brand Hooters, there's a particular demographic that they're hiring there that's part of their brand, and if you didn't fit that demographic, you're not likely to get a job within them. They're just conscious of the brand. What about word tracks? Again, just like we said with copy, whether you're formal or colloquial, how are your people engaging with your customers in their telephone conversations, and their customer chats, interactions, and for those with restaurants, do they have specific word tracks that they follow? Is it very formal, or is it, hey guys, how you doing? That kind of thing. You can appreciate those are different brand messages. Associations and affiliations. So I've got some examples here, and I want you to think of this. Be careful about your associations and your affiliations because it affects your brand. So I was involved with an example where we had a professional athlete that was endorsing our brand, and I was involved in those negotiations and developed a relationship with this individual. But we made sure that he was a class act before. We didn't want somebody who might be out there, and you can never tell, but we didn't want somebody who may go out there and do something that is socially reprehensible or whatever. So you want to make sure you take the time to consider your affiliation. So the examples I have up here are local sponsorships, a celebrity endorsement like I just gave. For the local sponsorships, your brand may be associated with doing good things charitably. It's like, well, we sponsor the local this, that, or other club, and they're always looking for funding, and because of our business, they are able to participate, and that benefits the community. So those types of things add to your brand, and you would really want to promote that. What about a spokesperson? Do you have someone who is sort of a figurehead or does your advertising and speaks on your behalf, whether at grassroots events, local things, and that person is becoming part of your brand, whether you realize it or not. Professional associations and the moves that they make. Sometimes you belong as a healthcare provider to a local professional, or chartered accountants belong to the charter, and these associations, sometimes they are doing marketing messages that are independent of your firm, and yet it affects your brand. And I've heard some people complain that they're not entirely happy with the messages of those professional associations, and I've commented on that before as well. So if you don't need to be involved and you think it's damaging your brand, you want to react to that. On the other hand, it could be promoting your brand, and you want to make sure that you have integrity and consistency throughout. Then the other thing I have down here, well, I've got partnerships. So if you're engaging with other businesses and everything, you want to make sure, once again, that you engage with other businesses and partnerships that are likely have very similar values. They don't have to be identical values, but they should be similar values, because if somebody really objects to something that's going on with one business and you have a close affiliation and partnership with them, then that's going to affect your brand. I've got virtue signaling down there, and I have said, and it's an official policy in here, we do not virtue signal. So if there's anything that we do that we communicate to the public, it should never be with the intention of virtue signaling. That is to say, look everybody, we understand how important this issue is in society right now, so we're going to identify with it in our marketing messages. That's just wrong. I may completely support a particular idea or charitable cause or whatever, but I don't want to make that part of my marketing or strategy just for the virtue signaling part of it. You should never virtue signaling. And the woke messaging. So I'm seeing this all the time right now. There's people doing advertising that's really meant to just show that they respect diversity. So, and it's a disproportionate thing where their advertising is showing some particular identity politics or whatever, a particular minority group that is disproportionately represented in their advertising. And I can understand why they're doing it. They're trying to say, hey, we support all the various communities or whatever. But it can have an opposite effect of turning off. It's like, why don't you just advertise and not try to show how woke you are and how good you are? Because often it sends the opposite message. It's like, these people and the advertisers who created that campaign don't even care about that. On the contrary, all they care about is the revenue that it's meant to generate. So I would advise you to avoid any virtue signaling or woke messages in your campaign and your marketing strategy, because it's going to affect your brand and it may come back to bite you in the end. All right, moving on. Let's get into tactical now. We've talked a lot about brand and your branding. What about tactical? What is the difference? You might remember back to the chart. Tactical is more refined, further down the customer funnel or the sales funnel, further along the customer journey. So once again, the objectives of tactical, unlike branding, which has that long-term effectiveness approach, your tactical is about short-term effectiveness. You're going to be designing marketing messages that aren't meant to be last forever. They may be forgotten, and it's about people get that message and they're going to act now. So number 2 objective is creates urgency. When you are designing marketing campaigns with tactical in mind, it's about, come on, it's time, we've got to act now. A call to action, a CTA, is often involved in your tactical marketing strategies. So that's the, buy now buttons, or, bring this coupon in by July 31st or whatever it is. There is urgency and a call to action. You've got this limited time. Fear of missing out, that FOMO. Your tactical messages will often be designed to create this. And there's a lot of that right now in the investment community, but that's marketing as well. They're trying to create this idea with their target market, with those prospective investors, or in your case, your target market, that if you don't act now, you may miss out and you may not be able to get this offer again. So that's what tactical is all about. Appeal to customer in late stages of the funnel. So that's what we're talking about here. So as we talk about the sales funnel, the customer journey, all of your tactical messages are designed to appeal to those that are in the late stages. So when you are creating a marketing message that's tactical in nature, you don't have to worry about, and you should not worry about, the upper phases of that funnel. Go and visit that video again if you don't know what I'm talking about. You're not at this point just trying to create awareness. You are assuming in your message they already know what they want. And so your message is about letting them know that, speaking directly to them. And so that's the next one. Addresses final stage considerations. And the examples I have on the screen, often price or availability, limited time offers and promotions are all a part of tactical messages, where the other branding messages might be, we have great value and we're a very reliable company and this type of thing. And we're creating an image of fun or professionalism, luxuriousness, those things we covered before. Now your tactical is like the best price, if that's what you're thinking that late stage consideration is for your people. It often is. Pricing and availability are two of the biggest things that people are looking for, especially if you represent a product or a service that they can get elsewhere. Now, I hope you've got some unique selling proposition that differentiates you from the competition, and you're going to do more of that in your branding, and you might remind people of it, but you're not going to have the focus of your tactical message on that. Now it's about, we have a limited time offer, a promotion that's available right now. I just want to make one comment on that, is some people will avoid the limited time offers and promotions altogether. Like our prices are always reasonable, we don't have sales. That's part of a brand that they're trying to create. I'm not going to respect that, but often the tactical messages will be surround that. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to look into and delve into some of the strategy considerations, the best practices for branding and tactical marketing. So the first one I have up there is utilize both branding and tactical. And it's a recognition of the customer journey and timing. If you only use one or the other, if you're like, well, I don't like the tactical, I'm not that good at designing a tactical marketing strategy, and I don't have any real good ideas for having a limited time offer or that kind of stuff. We understand that this should be related to your business, but think about this. Customers are at various stages of their journey in the sales funnel. And so the reason I say utilize both branding and tactical is because this recognition that you have as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a manager, that people are not always in the same phase. Throughout the entire target market you have, some people are just in the awareness phase, and your branding that you have going, your branding messages are going to speak to them. And some people are ready to pull the trigger, and if all you had was your branding messages out there, you didn't have some more creation of urgency, a tactical message, you might miss those people further down. And so utilizing both is a best practice part of the strategy. Balancing branding and tactical, since we can agree that you should use both, now it becomes a balance according to your business, and there are considerations for that for that balance that I've got up here. So capacity. If you're at capacity and you can't actually handle more business right now, you're sold out, so to speak, then you're probably not going to do a lot of tactical right now. But on the other hand, if you have excess capacity, you might want to be doing a lot of tactical. It's like we've got inventory. So that's the other thing, capacity as well as inventory. So those of you who have a great deal of inventory, whether that's time inventory, selling your professional services, or product on a shelf, that we understand that inventory is wasteful and there is a shelf life on it, and it will expire. And to the extent that you have excess inventory, then you're going to probably want to lean that balance more in favor of tactical. If you're very short on inventory, you might be wasting money to deploy too many resources, investment into a lot of tactical messages, because a person who pulls the trigger and you create urgency right now and you don't have the inventory to service them, then it's wasteful. You can actually do your brand damage by doing too much tactical in the absence of capacity or inventory. So you can understand the balance is business specific. Also, the effectiveness, what sort of feedback you're getting from the market should tell you. If your tactical messages are not effective, it's not working, then maybe you want to back off a little bit until you figure out why they're not effective, and then you can invest more resources once you think you've got an improvement initiative. On the other hand, if it's being very effective, and to the extent that you still have capacity and inventory to be able to have more, then by all means pour on some more investments in tactical. That's that balance again. It's business specific. Also, the return on investment. What sort of return on investment? You should be measuring that. Now, the next video in the series, maybe it's not the next one, actually, but further down in the video in the series, we will talk about the trident, or the three-prong approach to measurement of marketing, return on investment, and pay some very close attention to that. But when you measure your return on investment and you find that you're getting great return on investment, whether it's branding or tactical, then you may want to double your efforts, double down on that and say, okay, well, these branding efforts are really working, this tactical is really working. I'm going to tilt the the balance more in that based on the return on investment. What about market conditions? You may have a market condition where it's like there's a national tragedy that just occurred, or the economy's really hurting or something like that, and you realize this is not the time to put a whole bunch of effort into tactical because people are not buying. I'm not likely going to be able to change the market condition by myself with my small effort, the amount that I can put in to this. On the other hand, sometimes when everybody else is sort of asleep at the wheel and avoiding things, that's a great opportunity. So you look at these things within your market, and we understand there's a risk involved. You are making decisions on your business, but then you're responding to the feedback and the effectiveness. And seasonality is another big one. So if you have a seasonal product and you're not likely to get people to act now because it's not the right season for the product, then I'm going to back off on my tactical in that case. I'm going to spend more time branding so that there's longer term effectiveness, awareness. When it comes back around to my seasonality, I'm still top of mind for them. I don't want to start from ground zero. I want to be, hit the ground running. Choose your metaphor and make sure that you're bearing in mind all these various things when you're creating your strategies. The next one I have here as a best practice in your strategy consideration and your balance of branding and tactical is remain true to brand in your tactical. Don't deviate from what your brand is meant to do. You are always communicating to your market. So you don't want to have this incongruity between your tactical messages. So if you're supposed to be very professional and everything, and then you come up with a tactical strategy in your marketing that really blows apart what brand and the values you have and everything, that's wrong. You want to have integrity between the two. That's a best practice. Number 4, ensure that special tactical offers are legitimate. I see this all the time. You don't want to create this idea that we always have a sale going. Now, we do understand that people are at different parts in the customer journey. They're at different parts, and timing is everything. They're in a different stage of the funnel. And we want those that are ready to go now to know we've got something going on and now is a good time to act. We don't want our people to go, oh, well, I'll go with a competitor because they're having a sale and you're not. So I don't want to sound like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. I'm saying make sure any special offers you have are legitimate. And so you would take a look at things like capacities and inventories, and you might say, well, I am really low on this particular inventory, but this product over here, or this service, this department we have running has plenty of capacity or inventory to be able to sell. That's where your special is going to be, and it's going to be a legitimate special offer, a legitimate sale, legitimate savings, and you're going to get, it's transparent, it's honest, and it also builds trust with your customers, because they see, no, that this was a limited time offer. I thought these guys were just going to have that at any time. They said it was over at the end of July, and I went in August and it wasn't available anymore. So make sure when you're offering special limited time promotions that they are legitimate and people really do have savings, because that affects your brand. The next one I have up here is leverage technology and low marginal cost mediums for branding. So branding, because it is very difficult to measure branding sometimes because it's long term. It's not like a cause and effect that you see in a very short time frame. So what happens is you put in this effort, you deploy these resources, you invest in branding messages, and you might not see the results of that for months or sometimes years. And an ongoing branding, a really effective branding campaign and strategy pays dividends over a long time. And so what you want to do as a result of that is you don't want to sort of invest so much all up front in hopes, and then you sort of, expend all your resources. Like, well, I don't have anything to go forward on. So then what we would do is we would leverage technology and low marginal cost mediums such as email campaigns, content marketing. Digital marketing is far more effective than, say, traditional advertising campaigns. Like, you're not going to go and do a television commercial or radio spots or whatever if you're a startup and you're trying to just start to build a brand. Now, I'm sure some people can make an argument against that, and that there's a place for everything. You have to look at your business and understand that for your branding, I recommend leveraging technology and those things that you can commit to over a longer period of time because they're lower cost. The next one I have on here is greater emphasis on measuring tactical results. You want to measure your overall results for sure. And remember, we're going to have a video on the Trident approach of measurement. I'm not getting into that today too in depth, but I will tell you, measuring your branding efforts is pretty difficult. The progress is almost insignificant, or maybe significant, that might be the wrong way to word it. It may be imperceptible. So you're looking at things and you don't realize you have this groundswell occurring, and you might have an exponential nature to the branding efforts you're making. Very difficult to keep your finger on the pulse of that movement because it's subtle. But your tactical is, as we've said, is probably more expensive, it's more resource heavy, and you should very much be looking for cause and effect on that and measuring that. And if you're not getting good results on that, you want to respond very quickly. The next one I have here is confine campaigns to relevant market. I've made this mistake before. You could have the best deal in the world. Someone might be like, hey, if you want to do some marketing or some advertising with us, we're doing 50% off right now, this great deal. Or you fancy yourself a great negotiator and you negotiated a great deal on a particular advertising campaign, and most of it was outside of your relevant market. Like perhaps demographically, you service your local community, and a lot of, let's use the example of a television commercial that was national and it's seen across the nation, or even a video pre-roll on YouTube or whatever, and you failed to set the mark. That's the mistake I made. We spent a lot of money on a particular YouTube pre-roll advertisement, and we did not, it was our own fault, we did not set the geographical limits. And so, you blew the budget, and a lot of the people who maybe got the message are like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, we see that sale on, and then they go and they say, oh, well, that's across the other side of the country, or that's a completely different country. It's not relevant. So think about that, not just geographically, but think, are you sending a message to a way broader audience than is likely to buy from you? So you have to define your target market and try to make sure that both your branding and your tactical are geared toward them. Make sure that's part of your strategy. The next one here is you refine your strategy and efforts using data. Okay, so get real. Again, we're going to go into the Trident. What data points you have to be measuring the effectiveness, and then you want to refine. The real key here is to measure. What I'm saying is to measure, and then to assign strategy for improvement based on what the measurements tell you. You can't just remain static. Now, you might be super lucky or super competent, and the very first strategy you put together is the best strategy. I don't believe that that's literally possible, but for the sake of argument, if you fancy that what you've been doing all along has really been working all along, I could see you pushing back on me, but I'm telling you, if you're not measuring it, there's probably something you're missing out on, and there's a lot of improvement that you can. So rely on the data for marketing. And that makes it less of an art and more of a science. The next one I have up here is decentralized data points. So, and I also put up here, avoid echo chambers and confirmation bias. Some of you run your own business, most of you are running your own business, and you're in charge, and perhaps you're the smartest guy in the room, but is what your perception, is that the reality? What you want to do when I say decentralized is get other stakeholders involved, get people who maybe challenge the status quo and challenge what your confirmation bias is, what you believe to be true. Maybe somebody else, when you get the feedback, they're going to go, that's not my experience, and I have some evidence that I'd like to share with you. It could be anecdotal, it could be very data driven in terms of a specific measurement, but by decentralizing and getting more people, two heads are better than one, get more people in a room to discuss this stuff, then you can get some pushback and go, yeah, that's interesting. Maybe we can do some refinement because this goes against my perception, but there's some validity to somebody else who's giving you feedback. So decentralize those data points. And the next one I have on here is to titrate novel approaches periodically. So add little by little, over time, try something new. That's the art part of it. It's risky to try something new. I know you want to stick to the tried and true, and to the extent that you are proving things to be very effective, you want to, continue to deploy more resources in that area. But if you never try something new, then the competition does, and it turns out to be super effective, you're going to be left in the dust. So try new things, but don't, spend the whole budget on those. And again, collaborate and decentralize, get more than a couple of people in the room together, other stakeholders, and get these ideas and then try them out. That's the art part of marketing. It's really important to do that, and do that periodically over time. So there you have it. We went long today. This was a big topic to talk about. I hope you really got some great information here that you can use to refine your strategy for marketing, because marketing is so important. Remember, it's all about communication. You got to communicate your value to your intended market, your target market. So did you take some notes? Did you? If not, go back, watch this again, watch this video from time to time. Share this with those people on your team who are responsible for carrying out and developing the marketing strategy. You should be part of that team, and you guys should collaborate with one another and get your heads together, get some feedback. Remember, this is business specific. These points don't, they're not, the concepts are universally applicable, but your business and your strategy has to be business specific. So that's where I want to leave it today, and I hope you got something out of this. Make sure that you implement something in your business today, and leave a comment, because when you leave a comment, somebody else in the community reads it and they learn, and we need to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.